standing amongst the trees, not seeing the forest. That's the situation that everybody, including myself finds themselves in. I would say every once in a while, but that's not true. That's basically the normal. And that's okay. I mean, if I'm sitting at home watching a film, just recovering, so to speak, from work, that's what I want. I would just want to stay in that moment. But it can be healthy, of course, every once in a while also, to see the big picture, to weave the things together into one view. I will try to do this now. This view will, of course, be, well, it will be biased. It will be my version of the weaving together, but it won't change the fact that if you listen to this, you will then also be invited to see a bigger picture. Not that you need me to do that, but this is a catalyst. This is, I mean, there could be other sources, other situations. Just, for example, yourself, just sitting for a moment, thinking a bit, and then climbing to that higher level and looking down on the things that we are finding ourselves in the midst of. So that is what this is. And it will probably be very political every once in a while, and possibly also very angry every once in a while. And I might even resort to accusing and insulting and being angry every once in a while, because, well, this is all live and spontaneous, so forgive me. Anyway, well, a map of the world. That's kind of what this is. So what does a map of the world mean? It means, from the human perspective, existence itself, the universe, or whatever is beyond it, or before it, or after it, or who knows. That's existence, and how it matters to us as people. That kind of map. That's what I'm thinking about here. Well, I want to take a job on here in this game right now, but I guess that's not a good idea. This will just busy-fy my mind too much. I should play Power Wash Simulator for such a thing rather, I think. But the visuals are very pleasing in this game, so a map of the world. First of all, we find ourselves as biological beings on a planet in the universe, having emerged here, of course, via evolution, whatever really caused it. I'm not saying what caused the evolution, I'm saying whatever caused the universe. And that's, for now, irrelevant. The true answer to this. And I believe to know the true answer, but that's also beside the point. And I'm not like trying to ramp up to some kind of theistic rant like I usually do, even though I might end up going there, but that would just be the natural development of my information system, of my thinking, because I'm thinking about the stuff, weaving it together, and that's my perspective, but that's not the goal here. I'm not cheating you. So what is politics then? And if we're using that word, what do we mean by it? And that's already where things become, if I'm being a bit fast in my talk, in my words, a bit leapy, basically apocalyptic. But let's take it slow. Politics, that would mean topics, decisions, people, mechanisms in reality that affect a large group of people, not to say all of us. Because all of us, that's a tall order. Let's just stay with like a country, for example, or a state in a country. That's what would be politics. And there's also a small-scale politics, like in school or institutions or in a company maybe. What's their code of conduct? Are you adhering to it? What are the politics here? How will we solve this and that problem? If we think about it, politics, some people agree with this actually, I've seen that on the internet. Basically everything has become political or politics. But why is that? Because everything is touching everything else. Everything is affected by everything else. And so any decisions, any mechanisms, any motions that individuals or the people as a whole make, they affect the whole, the large scale of it. That's what it seems like, you know? If you're talking about gender and sex, if you're talking about right and left, if we're talking about immigration, if we're talking about technology, the rich and the not so rich and the poor, if we're talking about charity, whatever we're talking about, or if you're talking about, for example, entertainment media, when the films go woke or otherwise try to convey some political message, all of that then is effectively politics. And we see that these days. And that's really the point. We see it these days. But wasn't everything, every last breath you take political always? Of course it was. I mean, apart from something like the butterfly effect, or let's say the entropy of chaos, where something that happens here might stay here, might be completely isolated, because there's just really no relevant connection. I mean, that certainly has changed. Because we as a people, as individuals, and on a technological level, and when it comes to legislation and so forth, have become so much more observant. We are seeing more. What are other people doing? What are other people saying? What are other people thinking? All of that is being factored in, and even these days, even via automated systems. What are they tweeting, for example? That wasn't the case 100 years ago. So 100 years ago, you might have some discussion with some people in a pub, and that would be political. But would it be? It would just a bunch of local people who ultimately don't really matter. And these days it appears as if everything matters more. Is that the case? Well, what's certainly the case is that everything mattered at all times, because reality itself hasn't changed. It's still this cosmic cause and effect flow of atoms and subatomic particles and forces that connects everything. Where a decision that you make, how to live your life, of course has its logical consequences to the people around you, to the people in your life, and maybe to the politics in your town. And, well, if you infect enough people, who knows, maybe you can even cause the deciding votes in an election, in a regional election, or a larger one, who knows. That was always the case, but we have artificially elevated that to a higher degree, because, well, these days everybody matters more. And now let's zoom out a little and not think about politics for the moment, but think about mankind's overall trajectory through time. You might think, well, that's philosophy, that's not so interesting, because you cannot really know it, you cannot really control it, and it seems so very detached. But no, it's not detached at all. It's very, very relevant to the discussion. And if you really look at it, you see it explains the times that we live in, which are weird times, and these times I would call the literal apocalypse, but that sounds like it is now the topic of the talk. It's not. I'm just saying that's what I would call it. What is mankind's trajectory? Like I've said many times, we start basically as, I don't know, in the caves, as cavemen, or settling it doesn't in a tundra. It doesn't really matter. As primitive people who were just trying to not die, basically animals who are now sophisticated enough to use tools. That's how we started. Even before the Homo sapiens, we already did that. With the Homo sapiens, which is what we are, still classified as an animal, of course, because we are taxonomically we are apes, but that's beside the point. Even before that, which was 100,000 years ago, so before we began, like 300,000 years ago, there were already people using tools. About like 2 or 3 weeks ago, some wooden structures were found that show that there were already, well, beings on this planet, of course humans to some degree, who were actually building stuff. So anyway, we started back then trying to get out of the pain, out of the hunger, out of the cold, out of the fear from the neighbor tribe. So people banded together, protecting each other, working as groups, which then of course made the one evildoer that would attack them necessarily, and again, a group. So the problem is still the same. But, you know, we know that we are kind of herd animals. We're working together. If you're really thinking about it, and thinking about the colonization of space, for example Mars, is a great way to realize that we are so intimately weaved together, so dependent on each other, it's ridiculous. And that's not bad, but I mean, think about Mars. If we're now flying to Mars and actually get some people to live there in some kinds of huts, doing some science, and maybe somehow preparing the colonization of Mars somehow, These people will not be able to go on Amazon and buy something, obviously. But they can also not just say, well, let's buy an apple or something else from the local vendor. Because even if there would be such a thing in principle, what would the local vendor then in turn need? A place to grow the apples? Okay, that could be in some kind of greenhouse. But then to transport them to the place, to have money, to have the machinery that they need for harvesting, to buy their own survival supplies also. And that's just a simple, shallow example. When we're coming to more industrial, when it gets to more industrial stuff, like, material science, which is, by the way, super essential these days to technological advances, new materials, which interestingly can be invented by AI these days. AI can investigate material potentials in a much more select way and can then experiment on them, and then we can build those and realize, oh, this works. So a material science on Earth that takes chemical plants of various kinds, so spread around in various places. Maybe it needs rare earths, which then come maybe from a different country, brought to us on large ships, on which they are being put in containers, which consist of metal, which someone had to produce, and so forth. It's all weaved together, so complex, in such a complex way. But in the end, once it's weaved together properly, I end up purchasing some acrylic glass fruit juice, manually operated fruit juice thing as a present for a friend, which I did, which costs me like $5, including manufacturing and shipping on a ship from China to Germany. That's insane in various ways, even negatively. It should cost more, really. But anyway, that's where we're at, because everything is connected so intimately. So, as a group, we are functioning better. We climbed from the grave of suffering and fear and escaping the cold and so forth and so on, and not having any resources, to tribes that work together, that have their resources and that have their farming and all of that kind of under control. And so it grew and it grew, and now we have a whole planet. This here on the screen, if you see it, is not Earth, but conceptually that works. The planet even has kind of the same size. So what is this trajectory of mankind that I'm talking about there? It is ultimately, and this really, it seems like hyperbole, but that's just the most extreme way to express it. But the question is it hyperbole or is it on the money? It is us trying to control reality with our minds. You might think, well, it's not controlling reality with our minds. We are working for that, and we are working together. Okay, so you're using your mind then to use your arms and hands and legs and feet to steer reality. And these days, often enough, you just use your fingers to control electronic devices, which then control reality. You might say, well, they're not really controlling reality. They're only controlling something on a screen, like sending an email or some text on the internet or some game that you play or something. But first of all, this is changing because more and more actuators are coming into the system, which is devices, machinery and whatever that turns intention or something that is being switched or informationally changes into an action, like an electronic light switch or an electric outlet. So we can use machinery now to directly control an electrical outlet, which then will turn on or off a light. Or you can even tell the machine to do that automatically at a certain time. Or you can even tell the machine to do that automatically when a certain condition is fulfilled. For example, when you appear to be close to your home. All of that is completely normal these days. And I mean, in this case, you haven't built something together in that moment when you're deciding to do such a thing with a whole tribe of people. You have used your fingers and then you turned back to whatever you were doing before and after. that is much closer to using your mind, your brain, your will, to form the world, to make reality your servant. But that's really what it is, isn't it? I mean, if you're trying to not suffer the cold, what ways are there? Well, you make a campfire and you sit close to it. Or, if you don't want to sit close to the campfire, you will make a room where the entire room is warm. So now you're controlling a larger space of reality instead of just making a little spot to which you then have to cling. And if you keep zooming out this kind of example, this kind of thinking, then you see, yes, we have changed at least the surface of the planet significantly, at least in the areas where we live, to accommodate us. We have made it our servant. We have turned it into something that our minds can control. And we are trying, of course, to make the distance between our mind and reality, we're trying to make that shorter and shorter and shorter. I mean, how easy is it to order something now, these days? I know I would keep mentioning Amazon while there are other stores. I basically only use Amazon, so that's the reason I speak only about that. Basically, call me a Philistine or uninformed. But, I mean, the concepts I have work, so that's fine then, I guess. I mean, if I would have the spontaneous idea to buy a thing, or yesterday, I got an email from my mother. She said, well, I looked at something, she is pretty old already, and so she looked at something on Amazon, and she asked me to order it, so I could bring it to her, because she doesn't want someone to come to their home and then, hey, here's something, do you want this something? And she's like, fuck, I don't want that. So I let that come to my packaging station and bring it to her. And all it took was about 5 minutes to find those products, to check if there's really those products, to order them, and then to resume my day. How easy is that? And at some point I will get some notification, hey, go to that packaging station and fetch the things, and then I will have the things. So very easy, because everything is weaved together so much, because we have turned reality, to some degree, really into our servant. We are trying to make the distance between will and reality as short as we can, or between emotion and reality. I mean, if you have an emotion that is, ouch, it is cold, or ouch, I am ill, or whatever it is, that turns then into the will, that this shall not be so. Arguably, you could even say that emotion itself is already the will, because that emotion implies the will that will then follow. My personal view is that emotion and will are the same thing. That is just a different scale. Like, emotion is just the most high-resolution, most immediate, most moment-to-moment part of your mind's activity, of yourself, of your consciousness. And thought, and intention, and plan-making, and memories, and all of that becomes more and more crystallized, more and more macroscopic. I feel like this is not good. Can I slow down in time? Yes, I can. Okay. Yeah, I'm currently landing on the planet, for those who don't see it. And this game here, Flight of Nova, simulates the gravity and orbital mechanics and air friction, and then of course it can get too hot when you're entering like this. Anyway. Oh, there's nothing nearby? Interestingly, we can think of computers as our mirror partners, because they are kind of like humans. They have the immediate thinking, in quotation marks, it's not conscious thinking, I know. They have their intention, the program that they're currently running. They have their memory that might be fleeting. They have their long-term memory, and their state mutates over time slowly as the operating system maybe gets polluted or changed or new software is installed. And we use them as an extension of ourselves. It's interesting that they have kind of similar properties. The most immediate thing, and then it crystallizes to more macroscopic and more inert stuff. Okay, anyway, that's completely beside any and all points. the trajectory that I see mankind on is the goal to free the mind, to free the emotion, to let the emotion live on this planet or wherever else in a way that the emotion will be satisfied. That's what I mean. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I'm always toggling this here because depending on how high I am, the same button does something else. And I thought that wasn't already the height. Anyway. Yeah, I mean, let's connect a few of the things that we know in reality with this concept. Are we trying to control reality more with our minds? Are we trying to make it the place for our emotion to dwell freely? Well, one of the most extreme examples that we have these days is people saying, you said this on the internet about some general topic, that general topic affects me personally, therefore I object to you saying it, and due to the times we live in, I can even employ the government of this website on which you said that, or the service, or even maybe the government itself, to make you not say it or to punish you. That's pretty extreme, isn't it? That's one mind controlling another mind. Then again, aren't we all controlling each other's minds somehow? That's what we have language for. Or gestures, communication. Or clothing even. I mean, if someone appears in certain clothes, you might think, oh, what the fuck's going on here? I mean, that affects us. We are influenced by that. So then the question is, how far should this mind control go? This influencing of each other. And this particularly one of the, I mean, that's, you might think, okay, what are you talking about? What is this, philosophy class? This is completely irrelevant. That's, why would you, what are you talking about? What I'm talking about is that we are indeed also on a trajectory as a people to find out the answer to that very question. Because isn't that what we are in practice trying to figure out? Some people, I mean, that's the thing. See, mankind is figuring things out in two ways. One, in the way that you would agree could be called figuring things out. By talking about it, by thinking about it, by making decisions and testing them. Consciously, intently, and then rolling them out on a large scale. But what's also happening, and sadly that's happening too much, still these days, is that we're using reality to find out without really reflecting upon that. In history, many smaller civilizations, I mean, not mankind as a whole, I guess, have been destroyed, have died, you know? And how did that happen? Because they were not living in a stable relationship with the truth. Reality is the truth. And living in stable relationship with the immediate moment of reality, that's not already living together with the truth. I mean, what if the immediate moment is like, I don't know, let's say in Hitler Germany, where it's good if you don't hide the Jews and instead point them out. That seems like the thing to do to survive, right? But that's not really living together with the truth. And the truth probably is something like love, maybe? Coexistence, thy will be done? But don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you? Stuff like that, huh? So what mankind is doing too often is just making choices which lead to an outcome. The outcome is then experienced, and sometimes that experience is negative, or oftentimes, and then it is suffered. And then usually, of course, the small people, the ones who don't have any power, who are so easily replaceable, they are the ones who suffer the consequences, while the ones less easily replaceable or higher up the power chain, they will suffer it less. And I mean, it's pretty annoying that we are still in this state where the decisions are made by those in power, who then also have the power to not suffer them. I mean, why do we as a people design our system of decision making over the course of all of us? Why do we decide that the captains of the ship shall not be the ones who die with it when it found us? That's ridiculous. And, well, side note, why do we decide our system of decision-making, politics, the governments, in a way that is focused not on the decision-making itself, like what is supposed to happen and what is supposed not to happen? Why do we not focus it on that, but instead focus it on personhood. Like, this guy's wearing this suit and I like his appearance in public and he didn't say grab him by the pussy or whatever. And so that's the better person. So let's elect that person then. And then, like in Germany has happened once again with the current government, the person gets elected and then they turn on a dime when it comes to the promises that they made that they would do. So what have we elected there? The thing that we wanted? No, we have elected a person. And the person then does whatever the person wants to do. And the only punishment that we possibly have implemented for that person is, next time, we will vote for someone else. Oh my god. Given the radical consequences that the situation has for the people, how is the only consequence that we implement that next time we will vote for someone else? How is that not just protection of the kings who will not suffer the consequences in any way? These people, for example, in the EU, the globalists who govern like 300 million people without even knowing them, these people, they don't care where they live, because wherever they live, they will be pampered. They will have their own personal localized reality. The jet in which they fly, the limousine in which they drive, the protection that they have from the people, basically. From the people, funny enough. I mean, it's okay. It's a bit extreme to say it from the people, because the people generally are not a physical threat. Fine, okay. And where do they live? They live, I don't know, in a hotel, in a special luxurious building. Then they meet with other people that living like that also, in big halls where they eat expensive, decorative, tasty food served by people. They don't even have to cook for themselves. I mean, no one really needs to. You can just order in these days, but you know. And these people are then supposed to rule all of those millions of people, of which basically none, percentage-wise, have that kind of lifestyle. People who are bound to the place that they live in. The farmers, the people who have a job, the people who drive from A to B, the people who have family, the small businesses. The people who rule us are like aliens. Why are we being ruled by aliens? Because we had an alien invasion, and now they are ruling us. That's why. And how did that invasion take place? Well, primarily by well, there's multiple factors. One of them is that the systems of government that we have are implicitly problematic, and I don't have a good answer to that problem. But I mean, think about it. We as people, let's say in Germany, we have 80 million people in Germany, and if we want to decide what is to happen and what is not to happen, then we need to... We cannot sit down together in one room, talk it out, and then leave with a decision made which will then manifest magically. No, to manifest a decision, we need our institutions, the police, for example, just as one of many examples. And to make the decision, we also can't just sit down together. Instead, we also have representatives. So in other words, we are all living under the government of representatives. We must ask ourselves, of course, are the people who are supposedly representing us actually representatives? Well, often enough, they are greedy assholes, and they're also not very capable. They just have the politics down, and the rest is then done with consulting staff, and of course with lobbyists who say, hey, this is good, do this thing, and they will also have this money then afterwards. So isn't that a big benefit? Come on. So if these systems go a little bit insane, which they have gone in the United States, at least in the years past, I mean, currently it's looking a bit better. Sorry if that grinds your gears, but that's how I see it. And if they have gone completely insane in Germany, which they have right now, and because we have fascism again. Fascism is back in the house. And in the United Kingdom, fascism is back even much more strongly. If they have turned against the people, what will the people then do to get out of that? Ask their representatives? No, they can't do that. Their representatives are the problems. The system that is working against them is the problem. What will they do then? it's kind of laughable. In Germany, after the Second World War, when we came up with a new constitution, or what you want to call that, it's called Grundgesetz, like base law, that would be the translation, Grundgesetz, base law, which is not really a constitution, I think, but in principle, yeah, that's like a constitution. When we came up with that, there one law in there, as Article 20, I believe, that tells us if there's anyone who wants to dismantle the system, the democratic order and so forth, and there's no other way to solve that particular problem, then we have the right to resist. But what good is such a law? I mean, whatever times you live in, if you have such a law, then the times will decide that implementing that law, like doing the thing, is the wrong thing to do. You did wrong. This was not the case. You could have done something. You could have asked this and this person. You could have used this and these measures. But instead, you blah 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 blah. So what is that law even good for? If you will implicitly always violate the law when you try to follow it. Only when the times are over, everything will be judged and decided. And often enough, of course, the decision is not made by the truth, by justice, but is made by the victor, by the one who ultimately stood victorious. So, that we have ended up with politics that are not necessarily good for us. How did that end up happening? By the fact that these systems implicitly have the problem that if they're not perfect, then they are beginning to work against the people, and if they're even less perfect, then there's also no way to get out of that, because the systems will just mesh together, its institutions, to prevent you from changing it. The people cannot change it, they are fucked. They are now the sheep, the slaves, the servants, and so it is in Germany, in the United Kingdom, in the EU in general. And in the United States, it's very different, and I would like to live there, but, well, sadly I'm in Germany. I also have some long-term plans that I cannot really tell you about, because you would call me insane, that describe that Germany, Europe, even the entire world, will drastically change in the coming years, in the near years that are coming, just a handful of years, frankly, I guess, which will then cast out the problem that I just described once and for all. So one of the reasons is that the institutions might go insane, or even if they don't go insane, they're not perfect, and so it's likely that they will end up doing some stuff that's not really good for the people and might protect themselves from at least that aspect of negativity that they're doing, that this would go away. They will keep fucking the people. And then there's also the problem of speed as a metaphor. If you're driving your car slowly and you're not driving it perfectly, then that's fine, I guess. You can correct and the damage is done, like you're not exactly in the middle of your lane. They are negligible, I guess. It's not really a big problem. But you're aware that the faster you're driving, the more perfect your driving has to be, because the consequences of imperfect driving become more and more drastic. Now, this is one of those situations where I wished that the people would have really the understanding of how reality works. It works just in terms of energy. It's always about energy, 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 and energy, and only energy and energy and only energy. That's all it is about. So why is that thing with the car a good metaphor for politics or for institutions that have a lot of power over the people? Because of the energy involved. And what does energy mean in this case? It means the effect that it can have on the environment, on the world, on the people, the consequence. We're living in a cause and effect flow system. The reality is a cause and effect flow that swashes back and forth and is n-dimensional. And because it's consisting to a significant degree of information, actually, not just down here on this planet. But anyway, oh, 700 kilometers high. Oops, I'm in the wrong orbit. And I don't think I will have the fuel to get there. So energy. The car is now a risky thing to drive when it's very fast, because there's so much energy involved. Every little thing on its flow path is affected very strongly. If you're exactly in the middle of your lane, then that's the optimal flow for you, because the reality won't affect you negatively and you won't affect reality negatively. That's the idea, that's how we drive our cars. The same goes for politics. If they're exactly in the middle of their lane, these institutions, if they're doing exactly what they're supposed to, then that's fine. But we can agree that they have a lot of power. That's why we have them as representatives, to represent us, because we cannot just do that as a collective. We are just too many people. But I mean, doesn't this already clarify that globalism is by definition wrong? I would say that's what it definitely demonstrates. Why? Because it shows us that the ideal decision making would be that of the individual. Now, since we're living together as a group, we have to get together as a group. And if we're like, I don't know, let's say 50 people, we can sit down in one room and vote and talk together and talk past each other and talk in little groups, and then it ebbs and flows back and forth to the large discussion, and ultimately then decisions can be made. So then we can say that is proper, that is the best collective flow that we can achieve, something small scale like that. The moment it gets bigger, we need institutions, so we need to abstract. And these institutions, they need to not only represent us, and even the best of us, intellect and particularly, and that's really the most important part, emotion-wise, they have to have the right emotion. Because if they don't, then they will be, well, it sounds weird, but they will be loveless. They will not love us, but they have to love us. What does love mean? Let's say it means, if I would say I love you, then that should mean I want you to exist and I want you to be well. I think that's how we could describe that, no? Damn, I missed my window here. I should have accelerated earlier. Wonder if I can make it. So these institutions that we erect, necessarily we can't but do so on the larger scales. They have to love us. They have to want us to be, and they have to want us to be well, in a good way. Not just, I want you to exist in hell, but instead they have to want us basically to be in heaven. Metaphorically, these are metaphors. But that's what it is, isn't it? Oh man, I'm in a way too high orbit, I'm just realizing. Where do I have to go? 458 times 780? So really the emotional component of the people involved in that's among the most important things of it, really. What if their intentions are bad? Then we will get hell. Then we will get the United Kingdom as is these days, where the police will visit you at your home because they saw you tweet something on the internet which was not illegal, but they are still coming to your home to educate you as to your behavior and the trajectory it finds itself on. Where you will be arrested if they see you praying in the street in the wrong place. Where they will arrest you if you observe, and I say observe, someone else demonstrating, which has happened. Of course, those were individual cases, but that has happened, and the ruling stands. These people are now punished. Man, what I'm doing here orbit-wise is ridiculous. Yesterday I flew like an angel here, man. I've been flying for 3-4 hours, and I picked up the crates right from space as if I've never done anything else, and then I docked, and everything was flawless and great. And I had a video recording even of that, but the stuff I was talking about wasn't good, so I deleted that. That happens rather often. Okay, where am I going? I'm descending, and it's just rotate around here. I mean, it's interesting, right? This talk here, it paints a map. It doesn't tell you what opinion to have. It basically agrees with your opinion, or let's say, it really doesn't disagree. It agrees implicitly in a way by saying, by giving you, I mean, fresh consciousness, which you had before somehow, but it's reinvigorated by such information weaving. Than to follow your own agenda and views and whatever political views you have. Except if you're a globalist, because I guess then we have some kind of problem here. Why is globalism wrong? Because it decides over the many, and only few are making those decisions. These few people, as I pointed out, live in a way that is completely detached from how normal people live. And what do I mean normal? Well, the average person, just a statistical average, very plain simple. I mean, how hard was that to grasp? And they are not deciding perfectly for multiple reasons. I mean, even if you would, even if you would have politicians or rulers, bureaucrats, whatever, who decide perfectly, who would try to decide perfectly, the perfect exploration, they would still be human. They would make mistakes. And the more power you put in the hands of an institution, of a politician, of a bureaucrat, the more power, the more people are being governed, aka globalism, the more this collateral damage effect will kick in. Because the energy is higher. So even if the amount of noise that they cause versus the useful signal that they create is like 0 to 1%, even if that were so, and I believe it's not quite so, even if that were so, then the more power we give them, the more damage that will cause. Now, interesting question, of course, is what if we scale that up? What if we have many small towns that rule themselves, which then live together as states who rule themselves, which then live in a country that rules itself, and the whole thing is governed from the bottom up by the groups which govern the city, which and the groups of cities govern the state, and so forth and so on. Isn't that then the same problem still? Where we have a certain ratio, a certain percentage of fucked upness that is implicit? Maybe so, but I believe that the intentions can automatically be more pedal to the metal, the traction on the road. They feel the road, and the road feels them. See, one might think that someone who is powerful is controlling everything, but the truth is that that is just like someone holding lots of threads that are tied to the person's hand. Okay, I see that I cannot survive this because I don't have any more fuel. It doesn't matter. I didn't have an agenda here, you know. I was just flying blindly. It's not just like that they are having lots of threads bound to their fingers with which they can control the world, or reality, or whatever they're controlling, but this thing, Newton's third law of motion, is to every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And people underestimate how relevant that is really on all scales of reality. It even applies to the mind versus reality. When you're experiencing stage fright, you know what that is? That is you being exposed to a cause and effect situation. And you might think, well, that's just psychological, and you might investigate that in your brain, and then observe, yes, indeed, it's psychological, because I'm seeing myself think in these ways that are fearful, and blah, 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 blah. But what instills that fearfulness? I mean, personally, I hold that this mind versus reality effect is an actual physical direct effect, but you don't have to believe such nonsense. You can just go with just the psychological aspect. Why would you have that psychology? Because you're in a particular situation that you analyze, that you investigate, like the people sitting in front of you in the audience while you're standing on stage doing stand-up comedy. Thereby judging your trajectory of your future career, whether you will be invited again or not. They are doing that, they're judging you. And you know that, you want to be successful here, you want to entertain them, you see what the flow of the audience is, so you pick a different joke maybe, at first, la 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 la. So that's feeding back on you. And how you feel internally, in your mind, that is then, what the fuck am I doing? That is then affected by those thoughts. So we might say, well, that's just psychological, but where do those thoughts come from that inform your psyche? They come from observation of actual reality. So at least in this regard, we can say, yeah, that's Newton's third law of motion taking place. You know the weight that is to be lifted in the various directions that the situation could evolve into, and this affects the way you think. And then you would think, well, do I have the right to do that? Or will they judge me? What should I feel? What should I think? That's ultimately Newton's third law of motion taking place there. Action and opposite reaction. But anyway, let's go back to this thing with where the guy has threads on his fingers controlling the world. The things, the weights that you're lifting there, the flow that you're steering there, it also tugs on your fingers. And that's good. In the localized government, that's basically, it's like this. It's like you as an individual, living your life, doing your thing, walking on the street, sitting at home, doing whatever you're doing, being affected by the immediate situation, flowing with it, flowing through it, and making the right decisions, governing yourself. So the best way then to be governed is, of course, by some system, by some person or whatever, institution, that is like that feels the road. And do you feel the road in Brussels, or do you feel the road in your small town government? Where do you feel that? So in other words, the collateral damage ratio of the right and wrong decision making, when it comes to the effects of the people, where's the probability greater? See, if we stack up the governments from small to large, then we will have less collateral damage. I mean, something like a globalist orchestration might make sense. But globalist government, the globalist orchestration, would then be a mirror that we construct a mirror by a system like that reflects the world, us as a people. But it doesn't govern us. We still govern ourselves. We just use the mirror to see the whole, so that we can then make better decisions. That sounds meaningful, doesn't it? But what we're drifting towards, sadly, disgustingly, is indeed globalism, where we will be ruled by a few who are living like kings, ruling over people who cannot have that, who are bound to the places they live in, who don't have those riches, who don't have that safety, who don't have this situation that if they fuck up their job and get fired, they will already have 2, 3, 4, whatever jobs in the industry lined up because they made so many corrupt political decisions that steered the waters in this way, so that they would then get the post after their service in government. So when it comes to ruling the world, that's what we want, right? We want to govern reality. You want the reality that you feel is best. That's why you're flowing when you're walking or when you're sitting or whatever you're doing as an individual, interactively with reality. Reality tugs on your fingers, but your fingers also tug on reality, metaphorically. And we want more control of our immediate individual situation. So we now have more means to do that. I, for example, have space heaters here, and an infrared radiator standing right in front of me that I purchased about a week ago, or 1.5 weeks ago. And I'm glad that I did. It was my first one, and it's awesome. It's not one of those that have some reddish radiation. It's just, it's kind of as big as a television. It's white. Could also have picked black, but I mean, white seemed like the natural choice when it comes to thermal energy excretion. I don't want it to accumulate energy. And it's just hot. It's like 110 or so degrees hot, and I can touch it with my hand without getting burned, as long as I don't keep up the touch, because of the structure, because of the nature of the materials. It's not like I'm dunking my hand into hot water. That would be different. And so it has some convection heating, of course, because the air is touching it, but most of the heat is really radiated away by heat radiation. So there's an infrared radiator, and it's very good. It's right standing here on my desk, and it feels good. I always have warm legs, and that's great. That's where the heat really needs to be. I mean, for those who don't know, weirdly, even though their mother probably told them that if you keep your feet warm, then you won't get cold because the entire blood flows through them and it gets back up and so forth. There's some truth to that. So in summer, when everything is so hot, and maybe you don't have an AC, take a bucket with cold water, stick your feet in, survive the first 20 seconds, and then afterwards just feel pleasant and blissful, and this will cool you down. Also, sometimes an actual cold shower can do wonders, because then I have done that. Then when you're walking through a 30 degrees apartment, it will feel like you're walking through butter. That's how warm the air will feel versus your cooled down body. Anyway, so I have this convenience that I can rule my personal reality in this regard so easily, just by the push of a button. I could even automate it, because it has Wi-Fi connection, and there's some API that I don't know of. I only know that the official, so to speak, implementations in the usual applications that we all know of. So that's me controlling my personal reality more intensely. This, of course, means that my personal reality is affecting me more intensely, because, for example, if I think, hey, the space heater here, I should turn it off, it's getting too warm in here. See? There's more intense flowing with reality. And that is exactly what we as a people have been striving towards individually since the beginning of time, so to speak, until today, and also as a collective. And that is how we have to understand reality. That is how you have to view the forest. For that is the truth of the forest that explains all the things that happen within. That's one of the reasons why I believed for a long time that ultimately everybody will end up having the capability to program, to write programs, to write algorithms, to tell machines in a machine language, no matter how high level, human-like that language would be, what they're supposed to do. And the last time that I actually said that was right when AI was about to kick off, and now you can write at least small programs for just telling the AI how to do what to do. And my job, incidentally, is programming, and I'm utilizing AI a lot these days. Often, I mean, sometimes I wouldn't, because the project is just too complex, and I have to check the code that the AI would put out, and I cannot just say, hey, this entire project, look at it, this is the thing that I want to achieve. Even if I would just write down what the is and what the ought is, so what bridge the AI is supposed to build with software, that alone would already take pages. That's how complex that is. I cannot use an AI for that. But like 2 weeks ago, I wrote 2 programs in like half an hour using AI. Short, small programs, of course. But then I didn't have to waste time with that. It would have taken me an entire day, I guess, to do that otherwise. Or at least a few hours. But yeah, why programming? What am I talking about? Because if we want to make reality our servant, then the natural way to do that is to use machines that are part of reality. Robotics are now coming in, you know? We will have these humanoid robots. You might think that's just a fad or just hype. No. Reality as we know it is... Do you not see that reality is changing in an accelerated way? over the course of the last 100 years and before that also, accelerating and accelerating. The acceleration itself is accelerating. I mean, it feels kind of natural and normal to us, but imagine yourself to be an old fart, like 18, 19 years old, 1980 or 90 years old, who cannot basically, maybe, I mean, most of them, is my observation, appear to not be able to hook into the flow of these days. And I mean, that's something that we know, that it's not a new development, but this effect is intensifying, is becoming more drastic. That saddens me. But anyway, I'm not saying that reality should develop in this way. I'm not saying that. An incredible acceleration. And not only that, like politics is evolving faster. And that's the thing. We have institutions that were made for a time that is slower. These institutions now try to accelerate with computing and making harsher and more intense and more direct decisions, but that's not really working. They were not designed for the purpose. The structure, the system that we're living in, isn't designed for the purpose of eroding reality at the speed as it is evolving, and it evolves faster and faster. So in this regard, once again, mankind will make the mistake of letting reality make the decisions for us, instead of using mankind's head make the decisions consciously, and so once again, there will be a lot of victims and destruction and suffering. By the way, the topic of migration, which is a hot topic, and I don't understand why even. I mean, how clear can the situation be that should emerge, but that is different from the situation that has emerged? Migration, if it is boundless, implies that the resources are boundless. The resources are not boundless, so migration cannot be boundless. It's that simple. People who disagree with that, they are not to speak, for they are poisonous. If the resources are finite, and immigration, costs more resources than it gains, then this means that resources are being used by that. So if that is not finite, then regulated, controlled, destruction is inevitable. The destruction of civilization, or the destruction at least of the nation who is doing that, which interestingly is most Western nations these days. What the fuck's happening? But anyway, that's one of the big changes that are happening these years. And I mean, did you expect that? That your nation would basically, that there would be suddenly millions more people, all of which are just suddenly there from different nations, which is not in principle a problem, but I just pointed out an objective problem that is therein, and also there's cultural problems and the problem of ghettoification, where you think, they're integrating. No, they're just building these little islands which are becoming bigger and bigger until the rest has become the island, and that's not integration. That is us integrating into that which emerges. That is what's happening in Germany and in the United Kingdom. And would you have expected that 30 years ago? Would you have expected that 20 years ago? No, you would not have. Would you have expected that 10 years ago? Maybe, like me, for example, and then you would have said this is wrong. And then for whatever reason, they would call you a Nazi or a racist or whatever, which is ridiculous, it's just insane. But it's effective because it riles the masses who are used to obeying these power words, which are words that humans like to use. Humans like to abuse words because they have so much energy. They like to abuse the speech generally, to say things that aren't true, or are riding the train of communication maybe in directions that they didn't plan to, but then they keep riding anyway because they have done it already, so let's keep going. And that's how it works. Sadly. I mean, the truth is the most important thing. And therefore communication, thinking, is for a human the most important thing. Because that is you handling the truth, if you're not just handling it physically with your body and your immediate decisions. I'm flying basically like I did in my first days in this game. Now I'm ending up flying away from the planet because I'm just so stupidly doing this. But, you know, I'm not trying really to win this game, I'm trying to communicate with you. Which is, as I just pointed out, a bit more important. Because this isn't physical. It's just a screensaver for the purpose of the video. So consider yourself a neuron. Consider yourself one element in a brain. And consider the people of your nation, for example, to be the brain, to be that information processing system. It's important that the information can flow from neuron to neuron, so that the brain can process information meaningfully, correctly, in a working fashion. So free speech is really the one most primary thing that a nation should have. So I envy the United States as a German citizen who is living in a fascist state at this point. And the United Kingdom citizens certainly envy the United States if they're even half awake for the free speech that the United States have. The brain can function. The information, it can be brought forth from the mine. We're mining from the truth of existence. We are miners. We're trying to find out what the truth is for a given situation or overall large scale. And in the United States that works. That also leads to some downsides, of course, but the ultimate result, and that's the bigger one, that's the big picture, the important thing, that works because the brain can think. Free speech all the way. So robotics. See, for whatever stupid reason, people think that AI is kind of only a fad, or is only producing slop and is only hallucinating. Those people are just woefully uninformed. They don't know anything. Just don't listen to them, and they should be shunned when they speak. Why? Because I mean, free speech is one matter, but letting words that are wrong stand unchallenged is a different one. For example, we now have automatic cars. That is robots on wheels, controlled by AI. And those are working very, very well, actually. Just as one example. But also AI, like I said, can be used for material science, to find new materials or new biology. All of that is true and is already employed. And today I thought, hey, I want to replace my Raspberry Pi with an actual Windows PC, and so I did some investigation and I also used AI for that. Why? Because if I would use some news articles that I read, then I would find bits and pieces of information that is not entirely up to date, and that also isn't tailored to my particular needs. So I would only find, like I said, bits and pieces. I would have to read many articles. But instead I can task a machine to write an article for me with up-to-date information, including even some calculations as to my power consumption versus when do I actually use those devices and so forth. That's beautiful. That's awesome. That is, once again, I mean, if you want to make reality our servant by saying, hey, this light should turn on at this and this time to wake me up in the morning. This is something that I have, by the way. Waking up with light is much more pleasant than waking up with sound. You should try it. And then you can add some sound into the mix later, in case you didn't pick up on the light. But really, you should try that. It's much better. It feels so much better than being screamed into reality. So that's something you agree with, right? To have these machines, these automatisms, turn on the light automatically, or order the pizza while you're on the ride home, or before rather, or when you tell the washing machine to turn on way before you're home, so that when you are home, you can empty it and put the things, I don't know, wherever they belong. And in this moment, you're automating in a very simple way. You're saying, this and this time, or right now in this with this and this delay, or whatever. If you could give a more complex condition, like when I get home, do that automatically, that would be nice, huh? Well, we have that. But what if you could do that in a way like there's another person who interacts with you and knows what you want, what you need, or what if you could tell the other person that condition in a way that is much more complex, and then that would happen. Or what the thing should do, not just turning on and off the light, which is a super simple example. What if it's something more complex? That's what we will get with robotics and AI, and that is coming, inevitably. So the actuators that we have, with which we act on reality, will become much more powerful. We will have humanoid robots. Why humanoid? Because the world that we live in, the human world down here on this sphere, ish object, is designed for us, obviously. And so the best use we will get out of a robot that is like us, a humanoid. And those are not cutesy-wootsy developments, those are serious things, which will be world-altering. I tell you, this will change the world radically. AI is already beginning to change the world radically. I mean, you're seeing it in the negative way, for example, when you see games where AI textures have been used, or when YouTube channels create automatic videos based upon scripts that have been written by an AI, which have been inspired, as in caused, by an AI system that itself comes up with topics, which then will give you some AI blah 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 with an AI voice and some AI imagery, and some of that is actually good and useful, or at least some videos or some parts of some videos, but most of that is, I guess, really just a slop. That's the stuff that we don't want. But that doesn't mean that AI is wrong. It's like saying that a knife being used in a way that is harmful to a human in an unjustified way is bad because it can be used that way. But knives are also being used to slice bread. So that's not a healthy way to look at it. Now, what can AI do for us? It can alter the information world. It puts words on your screen. It sends emails. It looks information up for you. For example, it's a very shallow, narrow, simple example that we can all experience already. But is that really so irrelevant? See, the thing is, as we are taking more and more control of our reality, we are also doing something that is a bit surprising if you reflect upon it for the first time. We are virtualizing the real world. Not because the virtual reality that we're using, AI and such, is affecting the world increasingly, but because the world itself is becoming more virtual. Do you not care what's written on screen about you or towards you when it's an email? Do you not care about the movie that you're watching, about the game that you're playing? All of that is just pixels on the screen and sound being created by a machine into your ears. None of that is real. I mean, obviously that's true, but that's once again one of those situations, standing among the trees in the forest without seeing the forest. Sometimes you need to reflect. It's really just virtual, and this means that a machine that can affect this virtuality, it matters to you, because this virtual world matters to you. The emails matter to you, the internet texts matter to you, and so forth. And will this virtualization continue? Yeah, well, of course. I mean, our electricity grids have been controlled by machines for many, many years already. I mean, it could easily be 50 years already of digital circuitry being in control in many places there. And it's very important for us. But there's also something else that many of you like to ignore, the augmented reality glasses. You might think, I don't want to wear such a thing, it's heavy, there's this radiation directly at my head, the electromagnetic radiation. I personally don't care so much. And then everybody with glasses, and then you're basically on your mobile phone the whole time, and then they can gather all your data and so forth and so on. I mean, I'm not saying that these complaints are invalid, but ultimately everything has its downside. And then again, well, like I said, it's all about energy. Energy, energy, energy. Here we're talking about the energy that these systems have the potential of bringing into your life or affecting your life with. Just like AI, maybe you don't want to use AI, but if you want to hold a job, you will have to. This will come, this will be everywhere. Even if you don't like it, I mean, the only way to escape that is to not live on this planet. It will happen, end of story. So the best thing you can do is to embrace it and to learn about it and to interact with it, which is what I'm doing. And that's therefore why I am also very, very aware of the downsides, but I'm also very aware of the upsides and of the development and how these AIs are getting better. Because they are getting better. Incredibly much better. The step up, for example, that Gemini 3 Flash, the AI that we can easily use via Google, has done just in the last 2-ish weeks, I think. I asked the AI when that publishing happened, when that changeover happened from Gemini 2.5 Flash to Gemini 3 Flash, and that was really just like 2 weeks ago. That step up is really tangible. It really feels so much more clear how the information is conveyed to you and what information is being given to you and how responsive that thing is. I mean, not just fast, but also that it does the thing that you want. It picks up on what you want. You have to think about it like this. Let's say, wasn't there a station here? Very nearby? Is it the one in front of me? Oh no, there's another one. Right. There it is. 458. How far is that one away? 3,000 kilometers? Okay. I don't see it. Where's the other one? Oh, there it is. Right. Well, let's fly there then, if I can still do it. You have to look at it like this. We have texts written on a piece of paper by a human being, and then we have people who take that information written there and they type it out into a computer so that it can be digitally used. That's very important because you know how powerful the digital space is, how useful it is to have that information available in a digital form, very obviously. But do we? No, we no longer have the people who do that. These days, AI is doing it. Document scanning. It even happens in your photocopier these days automatically if you so wish. Not just scanning that, but even interpreting it. That has become normal. Do you see? What's happening there is there's the intelligent, so to speak, a machine. I mean, certainly more intelligent than a steam engine. So in this way, it's getting closer to, well, not to humanhood, but to like a person thinking and working with information, and that's fascinating. That's also why in the earliest days of computing, someone then created a program that was pretending to be an AI. That program is called ELIZA, and was a psychoanalyst. You would type some stuff and it would respond in a way that would feel natural-ish. It would pick up on buzzwords and it would say stuff like, well then tell me more about your mother. Your mother would then be the dynamic word in that sentence. And that's how Gemini still feels in its first sentence, sadly. I mean, the AI is very good. I also like Grok, but currently I'm really pretty much fascinated by how good Gemini 3 Flash has become. And I also like Gemini 3 Pro, which is really good. I've done good work with it, well, at work. what did I want to say? I lost my track here. Well, a machine that does that thinking and you can interact with. And so, well, when in Eliza, in Gemini, the first sentence when you have some complaint, hey, this is bad. Can you help me with that problem? Like this field of view in this game is a bit too low. Is there a way to hack that? The first sentence, you can bet your ass, even in the newest version of Gemini, will still be, that sounds frustrating, or something, some mutation of that sentence. Motherfucker, if I wanted Eliza, I would have used Eliza and not a sophisticated nowadays AI. God fucking damn it, stop with wasting that time. Stop frustrating me by telling me that things are frustrating, because now they really fucking are. Again, I don't fly as shitty as I'm doing in this video. I am much better at this now. I have like 25-30 hours now in this game, so I should really be better. And I am, but I'm not focusing on the game. I'm focusing on you. So this Eliza thing, we wanted AI, and isn't it wonderful to have this this potential person to interact with in a machine? Interestingly, nowadays that we now have this to some degree, now the people are suddenly opposed to it. What's happening? Why can't we have nice things? The problem is usually the people who say nice things. No, I hate those. What the fuck? Anyway, yes, I disagree with the slop. I disagree with the abuse. But do you disagree with the users? God damn it. So, that's one thing where we have. Well, I wanted to talk about the augmented reality glasses, because I mean now we have the smartphones, which like everybody has, and for the longest time I didn't have one. I mean, it was like 2019 when I got my first smartphone, which is pretty late in the game, but also meant that I was sitting down in the nest that the others already made with their collective experiences and the suffering of the early ages, and I didn't have all of that. Just, you know, thank you for making all of that. Ha ha ha. And the same thing is happening now with AI in a way. Because I was also not aware of AI for a long time, until our boss basically said, okay, now we have to deal with this stuff. And then that came into the mix, and then I started dealing with that intensely, because that's the kind of guy I am. I lean into it, because if there's a job to be done, I try to do it well. Why else would I be there? Just to get the money? That is morally bankrupt, motherfucker. You're not there to defraud your employer. You're there to collaborate with them on the project that is the local civilization and your own personal life, because that's what that is. You're collaborating with them. You're helping them, they're helping you, and that should be a symbiosis. You shouldn't be a parasite. And so when you do a job, you should try to do it well. As you're being a parasite, as you're trying to defraud them, as you're trying to take their money without giving them the value that they believe they're purchasing. That's wrong, and it's ultimately even evil. Why would you want to be evil? Of course, some people who have had different work-life experiences than I have might think, God damn it, what's this guy on about? What are you? Like sucking up to the big finance, blah blah blah. I don't know what you would say, but maybe my experiences overall have just been so indeed symbiotic and positive that I have this kind of attitude. So maybe I was just lucky. That may be the case, but I think you would conceptually agree with what I'm saying here. Hey, I might actually make it. Looking good. Then I can land here, and then what? I don't know, then I've landed here. Shut up. Okay, this one is moving upwards. That's what I have to do then also. Okay, alright. What about the AI glasses? Imagine, not AI glass, what am I saying? The augmented reality glasses, what about those? Well, think about it like this. You're looking at reality, but you can have any overlay that you so wish. For example, if you're a Stationeers player, you could just probably at that point in history just tell the AI of the glasses to look up the game Stationeers on the internet and to imitate that head-up display and henceforth give you that, assuming that you have the sensor data of air pressure and so forth. That would be a creative use of augmented reality glasses and of AI, and it will also just be in line with the kind of stuff that you want, probably. I wonder if you're still watching this. Right? Just as an example. But you could also have other overlays, because that was not yet augmented reality. Augmented reality means that you're looking at reality and it is extended, it is expanded. For example, you can see when you're on a holiday, you can see a three-dimensional holographic sign basically at the street corner that's pointing around the corner. I mean, it's pointing, hey, go here to find your favorite eatery, the pizza place that you want to go to. Go there, then you will find it in 3 dimensions. Or maybe if you're a young person, you might want to do some treasure hunting. Or why a young person? Anyone can do that. I mean, I'm not young and I'm playing this stupid game here, which is not stupid. By the way, I have talked to the developer because I found out that that there are sometimes closed betas. And he has agreed to, well, I guess, but just need to ask, anyone can get that, I guess, to give me a closed beta invitation. And so when the next closed beta will be in a few months or so, I will be able to show you the new things. And yes, I asked whether I'm allowed to make videos. The dev said, yeah, that's even welcome to give the game more exposure. So we're gonna have that. Haha. Now I'm flying towards the station. And at which speed? Well, let's see. 22 kilometers, 0.7, 0.6. I can see that in the list at the left bottom. A bit fast still. I should prepare to counter burn, else I will collide with the motherfucker. So you could just have some icons shown on your augmented reality screen showing you some objects that are not there. And so you could play in your old boring standard environment in a way that is much more interesting. Suddenly it would have different meaning. Contextualization, you know, that makes sense, that matters. While we're talking about that, I can only heartily and strongestly recommend that at some point you listen to some audiobooks, and in addition to that, even do that while taking a walk. Why would you do that? Because then you will recontextualize the reality that you live in. It will be like a dream walk. I've done that a lot in 1 year. I was surprised when Google told me, based upon my movement profile, sounds horrible to you, huh? Well, whatever. I don't suffer it. But they're exploiting that. Yeah, of course they're exploiting that by, I don't know, I don't feel the exploit. Even if I try to fucking feel the exploit, I don't see it. In this particular case, anyway. So, it was telling me I had walked for over 800 kilometers. What? 800 kilometers in half a year just to while listening to audiobooks? That's crazy. But I wasn't feeling it. I was coming back after like 5 hours, 20-25 kilometers walk. Or 15 maybe, it wasn't always that long. Because I was just dreaming away. I can only recommend that you try that. Really, it is an enrichment of your life you can't fathom. Before you have tried it, maybe you will find it stupid and boring and won't have fun with it. Maybe I'm a special kind of person, or a rare person, or blah 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 blah. But the enrichment that I've experienced, I can only tell you, you have to try that. Why am I not doing it right now like that then? Because, well, it would look a bit stupid if I would be talking to the microphone while I'm out there, and it would be loud, and I couldn't play this game meanwhile, and it would feel like a waste of time. But I've done it for quite a bit. So enrichment, contextualization, reality, augmented reality. So how many realities can you then show there on your glasses? Well, that's the point. An infinite amount. Anything that anyone can come up with. And of course, the level of invention, so to speak, necessary in that day and age to create a new one will be very low. It will probably even be a built-in feature to the particular product that you purchased. Maybe it even already is. I'm not informed about the particular developments right there because I don't care. What I care about is the large-scale developments that I'm talking about here. Mankind, technology, AI, freedom of will, and well, ultimately the apocalypse. That's what I care about. Once technology is far enough, then I will care about the actual implementation. Until then, no thanks. And part of the actual implementation is, of course, what? Adoption. As long as it's not really widely adopted, I'm not so much interested in it. I know, this is an egoistic, parasitic kind of way of thinking about it, because then someone else will have to do the adoption, and I would just sit down in the boat. But that's just the kind of guy I am. I am an egoistic asshole, to some degree. And in some other degree, I'm the most loving person that you can possibly know. And I mean that literally. Anyway, because I've measured what love means, and I've measured mine to be pure. And when it comes to purity, I would have to explain to you what that then means, and then we get into murky waters that will make you be put off even more than you already possibly are. Anyway, so then we will have an infinite amount of potential realities that we can just switch from A to B to C to. You might think, well, that's too much, I don't want that on my face. But were you an early smartphone adopter, or did you come late to the party? I mean, someone out there listening to this probably, I don't know how many handful of people are listening to this, but in principle, there's probably a listener who would say, yeah, I wasn't an early adopter, and I didn't like that, and that we have to use these things for everything, and now I still don't like them, but okay, sometimes I find them pretty useful, yeah, so I give you that. That same thing will happen, of course, when it comes to augmented reality glasses. That's what will happen. Once that's widely adopted, it will even to some degree become a necessity. But it will also do one thing that maybe you have already forgotten again, because you're not looking at the big picture so much as I like to do, and I'm trying to instill within you also that kind of mind weave that does that. You have already forgotten, maybe, again, that we're on this trajectory, where we're trying to free our will, where your personal emotion, your personal will shall rule over reality. Can you rule over reality more by just imagining a different one? And don't mean just fantasy, but one that is tangibly real, because we have turned realities so much into a virtual space. And then bring AI and robotics into the mix. What we're doing is we're taking ultimate control of our little human reality down here on this planet. Lock. Hey, do we have any jobs that I can take from here? I'm at Auckland Station. Station Auckland Skybarge. Oh, that sounds perfect. 6 minutes left. Great, let's do that. Where do I have to go? Right over there. So, we will be using very intelligent and capable actuators, robots, to affect the human world that we live in. We will be using very intelligent decision-making for that, and a lot of that will not actually be our decision-making. You might think, okay, that's not good. You're wrong. Because you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I mean, the straw man that I'm thinking about is misunderstanding that. See, when you are clicking on a thing in your operating system so that it then happens, you are making a large-scale decision or a high-level decision. But there are lots of other decisions that are taking place because you made that decision. And that is the same thing that is happening also when it comes to AI, just more complex. You might think AI, we can never get that under control, we can never get that sorted. That's exactly what made me so delighted when I was interacting with Gemini 3 Flash yesterday. Because I really got the feeling we are figuring this shit out. This is beginning to work. This thing is really capable understanding, informative, non-spammy, keeps its context, really knows what I want and wants to give it to me. We are figuring this out because it's the one thing that mankind is good at, because it's the one project that I have been pursuing with billions of people for 100,000 years, to take control of reality. So that's what's happening here. So and now that's one I mean, it's talking about so many topics, no wonder. So someone is not digitizing your documents for you, and that's very low-level machine work. It's not as low-level as just the combustion engine, which is also just that, but it's an information machine doing the work. And it's not just an email system or something that stores your data or adds 1 and 1 to 2, a calculator, but it's one that can decipher written words, even though they are so organic or dynamic or non-machine-like. Basically, the bridge between the human and the machine is getting more solid, it's getting better. And that's good. And the more we are bridging this, the more the interfaces will be getting better, because we really have to think in terms of interfaces. What is an interface? Well, your doorknob is an interface. What? Of course your doorknob is a fucking interface, man. What else is it? You're interacting with the door, using the doorknob as a handle, or let's say a door handle, the thing that you have to push down. You will see the doorknob, you will feel it, you will interact with it, you will see how it behaves, and this is the way how you will have to behave, how hard you push that down. When the point has come for you to pull the door, you are operating well, it's not a machine really, but in principle, you're operating that mechanical object that is the door by the interface of the door handle, of the doorknob. It is one of the most primitive examples of an interface. And that's how you have to think about that. Interfaces. And here, in this game, for example, that one Stationeers, we have only the output interface of audio and video. So we have to use that wisely. So I find that sad that the very immersive game Stationeers is not utilizing that interface well. After all this time, still your expression of pain, so to speak, is just to have heavy breathing or maybe coughing, but that's all. Or when you're opening your helmet on the moon, when the vacuum of space affects you directly and in a hurtful way, all that's happening is that the machine in your suit, which for whatever reason is also active when you're not wearing your suit, is telling you that this and this is happening. So that's basically directly telling you to your face, you are not actually experiencing this. You are disabled as a perceiver, as an experiencer in this environment that you find yourself, the simulated environment that you find yourself in. Instead, there's a machine that you have as an extension of yourself that will relay that information to you. You might think the way I'm putting it right now is idiotic, but no, I'm just putting it hyperbolically. But that's all it is. It's only hyperbole. It doesn't make it wrong. So what we should have instead is screen effects, like a vignette or whatever. I don't know, but it certainly should come over as an experience. That interface is not utilized well. And since I'm thinking so much about interfaces, I'm also very aware that in Windows, for example, that most of you are using, probably, one of the most important windows that we have in there, the properties window of a file or particularly of a shortcut, that window has not evolved in 30 years. It can still not be resized. It still has a layout that is not using its width optimally. So the text that you have to enter is the long shortcut text with all the arguments and so forth and so on and the path. Yeah, there's always a chore to enter. Why has that not been changed? because the people doing that are assholes, is really the way I want to put it. They don't give a fuck, they just want the money, they just want the power. They don't want to give you a good experience. If I would have that market position that Microsoft has conquered, I would give you a better fucking Explorer, dude. But they don't care, they don't do this. And I dislike that intensely, because they're wielding the power. That power that they're wielding is not justified, for they're not wielding it well. They're basically also like politicians who are driving at a high speed and they're making decisions that are not good, they're not pure, they're too impure, too negative. So interfaces. We are interfacing with reality with our hands and feet and eyes and ears, and this is changing now that we're interacting with reality also by means of writing emails or using machines or like cars or using the smartphone. And now we are also telling computers what to do in human language where we don't need the programming, which brings me back to that. Why would programming still be required, since we can now get our willpower on the road, get some traction with just human language? Because abstraction is very important. Understanding abstraction. Now, if that doesn't tell you anything, then this means that you need to learn it. Because it is so... No, sorry if that offends you. Sorry if that offends you, like Mr. Know-It-All, blah blah blah. What if, at least in some regards, I am a know-it-all? I mean, I'm an idiot in many regards, that may well be the case, but I'm not an idiot in regards to knowing what it is that I'm good at, and in the things that I'm good at. So yeah, you should learn about abstraction. What is abstraction even? Well, that's a good question, because that implies the answer. What is abstraction? That's kind of what it is, right? The what is. If you're looking at a thing, when you're asking yourself, what is it? What is its meaning? What is its mechanism, its underlying nature? That is the abstraction. Example, let's say you are a new human on this planet, so you don't know much yet, and you're looking at a bicycle. And then you're looking at another bicycle. And then at some point you have seen enough of these that you have kind of a feeling what a bicycle looks like. Then you have abstracted a bicycle. That's what that is, and it's an abstraction. I'm just talking visuals here for simplicity's sake. And the same you will then also do to cars. And what happens there? You're standing in the forest, among the trees, and you're seeing all those trees, and at some point something happens in your mind that is mysterious to us, that we haven't yet deciphered, that we have implemented though in machines, and we can also tell you how, because AI is really not complicated. Speed is now almost 0, so I'm now in free fall over the place where I needed to get to. So we saw, if you are watching this, that 800 kilometers distance to the thing is kind of when you have to start your deorbiting thrust. So don't believe the countdown that shows you that you have to do that when you're 6,000 kilometers away or whatever. Anyway, well, when you have understood something in school, and a fellow schoolmate has not yet understood that, and then you think, I have understood that, let's explain it to him then, or to her, or them, or whatever the thing is. When you have, then you're trying to explain that, and you think that your explanation should be sufficient, but it is not. Why not? Why is the person not understanding? You cannot fathom. And that's exactly... I mean, you can, of course, help with that and accelerate it, and ultimately it will work, I guess. But the problem really is that the mind itself has to take the leap. It has to build the muscles to stretch itself, to be able to wrap itself around the set of data points. It has to build the wings that allows it to flap itself, to fly a little bit higher and not see the trees but the forest. And when it sees the forest, then it has understood basically every individual tree. Once you have abstracted those bicycles, when you see a new one, you know, that's also a bicycle, for I now know what a bicycle looks like. You can do the same with cars. But this means that we have one forest, the bicycles, and another forest, the cars. And you have climbed above them. And you made a little dot there. that says cars, bicycles. These 2 dots are data points of a set of a higher order. Maybe the set of, personal vehicles or whatever. It's pretty arbitrary at some point how you climb up the tree of the cosmos, really, which is what that is. Because reality itself is structured like that. Because that's how we can learn of it. Let's say atoms, for example, are a pretty fundamental property of reality, aren't they? And they are very, very abstract because they don't have some concrete form, but they can build all the concrete forms. Not bad. Back to form, I guess. Oh, that's possibly because now I have an agenda here instead of just drifting around. Or maybe I'm neglecting you a bit too much right now, which may be the case. So let's get back on topic. Which is abstraction. If you have seen these 2 data points, then you can possibly abstract them to be maybe the set of personal vehicles. A personal vehicle looks kind of like this, or kind of like that. Maybe it's not a good abstraction, a good way to put it right now. That may well be the case. But I'm just giving you an example. And in this way you can take arbitrary data points in reality.
TL01, base 163 ground. Good to see you. We have you on approach.
And pull them together to sets which then in turn are data points. And isn't that a very revealing or enlightening way to think about reality, to realize that any abstraction, is itself just a data point of a higher level set. And if we keep doing that, then we will ultimately arrive at the set that is called existence, which we assume the universe is. That the universe is the entirety of existence. Some people think there's a multiverse, lol, idiots. Or there's also God. Well, I would also say lol in some degree, even though I myself am a theist. Because I believe that God is the universe. But okay, that's... And even more radically, before I lose you and you think, oh, that's one of those guys, you're just relabeling it. No, I actually don't want to talk about that stuff right now. But God is you. We are the one God who has decided for the eternal coexistence of himself in this dream that will never end that we call the universe. And that's really the gist of it. This is heaven in the making, and we're still building it. We are trying to regain control over all of existence, which once was, of course, just the mind, all that existed. But now we have this nice universe around us, and we're still trying to control that. We are re-emerging from the necessities of giving into the dream to ultimately then control the dream, following the rules of the coexistence game. Because ultimate direct mind control over reality, that's illegal. That's not what we can afford to do, because then we're back at the old days. And it's interesting that some of us are actually trying to go back to the old days, and then I'm talking about the EU politicians and such, who are abusing the power of the mind, are abusing the power of, well, exerting power abuse in general, to control reality in a way that is not we exist together, but that is I exist and I control it all. That's what that is. That's the original sin. The one original sin that is, and there is one. The attempt to control the will of the other instead of being its servant, because that's what we are all to be. Each other's servants. You might think, well, that sounds stupid. You already are that to some degree, and it delights you. It's pleasant, wise, and balanced. It's the exact thing. We are finding, as mankind, the answer to what the golden rule really means. We are trying to find the infinitely complex boundary between you and I. And once we have found that perfectly, we will have the perfect coexistence. Anyway, so abstraction. That is when you abstract reality. But interestingly, abstraction also plays a big role when it comes to implementing projects. For example, if you want to go shopping, that's technically still a project, follows the same rules. Or when you want to, I don't know, write a program, for example. Let's say you want to write a game. Let's say you can program, or you're using, I don't know, vibe coding or whatever, and with an AI, and you want to write a program. How does that begin? Well, first of all, you need some free time, I guess. So let's say we have the winter holidays. And so you have now the aspiration, the emotion. I want to do something new. I don't want to play a game, I want to make a game. That's how it starts. That's the tip of the pyramid. Interestingly, the tip of the pyramid is the intention. So I wonder what the tip of the pyramid of reality is. But anyway, so the tip of the pyramid is the intention, and then you have to make that more concrete. What exactly do you want to develop there? How do you want to develop it? Which language? How far shall this go? Will this just be a draft? And so forth and so on. All these decisions are important, and they are very high-level decisions, for they imply all the rest. They are the abstraction from which the concrete set will follow. See how this works? When we're trying to understand the universe, we're climbing up. When we're trying to find the origin, whatever that is, fellow God. But when we are trying to create a project, we're starting with the intention, and we're climbing down the tree. And as much as it's harder and harder to climb up the tree of reality, because, for example, we haven't yet unified general relativity and quantum mechanics, because, well, we can't do that yet. In the same way, this means it's of more importance. It's more all-containing. It contains more things. If you're climbing higher in the set system, then it contains more things. In the same way, when you have a project, the first things at the top, they decide it all. And then when you have climbed down a little, decided by the stuff above, that decides all that is below, or at least in some conical rays that are being cast downwards, kind of like that. Aha, a base 6 kilometers away, and from there I fly to Norvik station in orbit. Yeah, let's do that. Sounds like fun.
Good luck.
I was right over there.
TL-01, Skybarge and Tori, welcome. We have you on screen.
So that's why it's very important to make the right decisions when you're climbing down the tree. And now you have seen, hopefully, I guess, I mean the explanation was pretty clear, why understanding abstraction is important. Why understanding something like a tree or hierarchy of abstraction is important. So you can navigate this abstraction system up and down, you know where you are, this is your map, and so forth and so on. And I wish this would be taught in schools, because, I mean, isn't this kind of a mind map already? Are we not talking about how your very consciousness works? And your consciousness versus reality. And reality itself also. I mean, this is very important. Why is this not taught in schools? Because I guess the people haven't yet woken up to the truth of it, or haven't yet grasped the importance of it, or they're just too loveless. All of that could be true. Because certainly I would have to like to have a total realization vortex, or what its name was in The Hitchhiker, of, you know, seeing the world and then seeing a pinpoint. This is where you are. Your mind is still very low level. You don't know yet anything, but you will climb up, and this is how this works. Isn't this a good thing? We should teach this in schools. We should teach our kids how to think, not what to think. Okay, so I have to go to Norvik station. What? Oh, did I pick the wrong mission? Mission is active. Station Norvik. I don't know. Right, I'm supposed to launch into orbit from whatever station they tell me here, but why would I? I can just, oh, the problem is I cannot timescale from here. I have to fly to a local base here. this is not the base I'm supposed to fly to, but I don't give a fuck. I know how to get to a station in orbit. I just need the time scaling because I don't want to wait for 3 hours now. And you can only do that from the ground, not from one of these ones. So what have we seen now? We have seen that mankind is on a trajectory to free its will. We have seen also that the changes of reality, they're becoming more and more radical. Yeah, and there's something I haven't yet touched upon sufficiently. This machine that is now reading in the documents, that's one human job that fell away. And then eventually we had more sophisticated AI like spell checking.
CL01, base 163 ground. How are you today?
You might say, well, that's not AI at all. What are you talking about? That doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's a machine doing a human's job, because that's what AI ultimately will also then do. And that's the same thing happening still these days, only this effect is accelerating. And now that you have a more refreshed or at all view of abstraction, you can realize, hey, wait a minute. Very low-level things could be done by machines already, very low on the abstraction hierarchy, because they were very unintelligent. They could take the concrete text that is written, could look at the concrete word, and then say, okay, this word's misspelled. But they couldn't do any higher level work. But these days, they can even already respond meaningfully to support emails. Case in point, sometimes when you need support, you will ask an AI, hey, give me some help here. So there's more jobs falling away. But really what we have to observe there, what is the system, the pattern? The pattern is that the AI itself is climbing up the tree of abstraction. That is what's happening. The ability of the AI to understand reality, to see higher level sets, to bind information together in higher level, more stretchy data sets is increasing. That's what that is. And this means that what you have to do is you have to stay with your personal abilities 1 or 2 or some steps higher than the AIs have evolved so far, and then use them on that lower level on which they are to serve your purpose on the higher level, your job, your programming, whatever you're doing, to get that job done. That's what you have to do. I think that's a good way to put it. Where do I have to go? To Norvik Station. Let's see where that is. There we go, Norvik Station. How long would I have to wait for a launch window? 1 hour. And how much time do I have for this mission? How much time do I have left? Oh, none. I have already picked up the mission, so this is not timing out. Nice. So let's launch to orbit then. Norvik Station. 755 kilometers altitude, 7,500 meters per second orbit speed. The further out we go, the slower the orbital speed, because, of course, because the closer you are to the source of gravity, the more it will pull you in, so the stronger you have to make an effort to fall sideways. Yeah, climbing the hierarchy of abstraction. That's what we're doing as mankind, and that's what we're now teaching the machines to do. And that's even, see, I mean, people are kind of shitting on AI every once in a while, and I find that stupid. Maybe they don't understand how AI functions. They are implicitly, and down to the very last atom of their, well, which is the neurons, abstraction machines. The goal that they have to fulfill is abstraction. Look at the data, see the pattern. Try to derive the set. That is their purpose. That is how they have been built from the ground up. And so that's what they can do. And so you can expect great things from these machines, as we are already seeing if we are willing to open our eyes. So let's go up to Norvik Station, orbiting eastward. yes, a nice big picture, no? Seeing what mankind's trajectory is, and then seeing kind of your position in it, seeing your mind's position versus the hierarchy of the abstraction tree of reality, and seeing also that we need to consider that these machines will keep climbing up the tree of abstraction. They will become more and more capable of understanding reality. Understanding doesn't require qualia. Obviously it doesn't. Because we can translate the information of reality in a way that the machine can then process. We've been doing this for a long time. For example, just by typing numbers into a calculator. Now the calculator can give us a new answer with its simple, intelligence. So we will be confronted with AI on all fronts. Even if you don't want that, the business world that we technically all effectively live in is driven by performance, by results, by quality, by customer demand. Today, for example, I was on the webpage of one of the computer vendors where I buy pre-configured computers, which is all I'm doing, because I've built my own computers for a while, but then eventually I just thought, fuck these $100 that I lose here. Instead, I will have a machine that will definitely work together with itself. I will not accidentally destroy it, and if something is not working, I can just return the entire machine instead of having this and this trouble. And of course, these constructions are getting better. You might say, well, they're not building the optimal machine then, you're missing out. That was probably the truth at some point, but I think these days it's even inverted. That's what I think. Anyway, I was on their page and then I saw, oh, they have an AI assistant. Let's see how good that one is. And I was using normal human language, and it was not just a buzzword thing like we're still seeing on so many web pages, where it's just saying, I'm sorry, my responses are limited. You have to ask the right questions, like in iRobot. The hologram there. But instead, it was just really responding to what I was asking. I was looking for the information, it was giving me that. Good stuff. So that will come everywhere, this AI stuff. So if you have a problem with that, the problem is really a you problem. That's really what that is. Well, okay, maybe that's not a good argument. We could say, well, the Nazis are coming everywhere, and so if you're not agreeing with that, if you disagree with that, that's really a you problem. Okay, obviously, this abstract, the argument doesn't work. But, AI is really fucking useful. See, we have the problem of limited resources on this planet. Oh look, I could go down there also. But I don't wanna. I wanna go up there to Norvik Station. NOR. And I'm already pivoting up there to the highest point of my orbit, which is 758 kilometers. I'm not yet there. The more I go there, the slower I will ascend, and then I will descend again. Except, once I'm high enough, I will also accelerate forward to really fall sideways, and that's how I'm in my orbit then. And that's what this game taught me. I didn't know this. To fly this, to experience this, and how then to interact with other things in orbit, how you would have to fly. Which I didn't quite demonstrate at the beginning of this video, did I? But anyway, this is basically a podcast, so let's not consider the visuals so much. So the AI, it will be everywhere, whether you want it to or not. So what you have to do is you have to learn it. You have to confront yourself with it if you don't want to miss out. You have to be the one who stays one step or two or three ahead on the pyramid of abstraction above the intelligence of the AI, so that you can make them your slave instead of being replaced by them. Because guess what? If you are one of those people who type up things that other people have written, or if you're doing spell checking for others, you're no longer needed. That has happened. The machines have taken over. And that is what will happen on many other fronts also. Yes, it will. Because why? Because 8 billion people want that to happen. All the people. You might say, well, I don't want it, so that proves you wrong. Well, implicitly, 8 billion people are working on that same project, which is turning reality into our servant, instead of us being the ones who suffer it. We want to turn the world into heaven. Metaphorically. In my perspective, it's actually literally, but alright. You might think that I'm into body modifications and all that stuff, huh? No, I'm thinking about infrastructural means that are actually implemented in reality itself. But I don't want to go there now. because that is an entire different can of worms. So Norvik, how far away are you? 728 kilometers, 714, 704, so getting closer quickly. But I'm not yet high enough to accelerate, so... So we have limited resources, and one of the resources that we have is work. See, there are people who believe in the zero-sum game. These people are idiots, and that's fine. Let them be idiots, why not? As long as they don't have any power. The problem is many of those raise their voice, and many of those are actually politicians, deciders, people who have an important voice, or a voice that is considered important, even though it should rather be, well, cast to the wayside. People who believe in a zero-sum game. People who think that if there's a rich person, that means there must also be poor people. Well, in some way, yes. If you would consider someone has billions, then someone who has only, like, I don't know, an income of $5,000 a month, which is a lot already, that person you could consider poor in comparison. But that's just semantics. Just because there's rich people doesn't mean that there have to be poor people. That doesn't mean that at all. Absolutely not. That's complete bullshit. Because, I mean, okay, let me talk about the money system then. How does that work? You might think, okay, that's boring, uninteresting. It's not. It's very interesting. Do you not want a map of reality? So let's say we have a new country, so to speak, where we want to now create some money system, and cannot just mesh with the rest of the world or whatever. How do we start that up? Well, people are, of course, swapping goods, because that's the only value we have so far. Goods, apples, cows, milk, or work that you can do. I will carry this for you. Stuff like this, you know? But at some point, of course, we will use currency, and then the question is how much money should exist in circulation. And for that, we have the central banks. A central bank is a government bank. This bank is a bank of the system. It's not just, I mean, any other bank is just a commercial company, which is effectively then also a part of the system because it's of such high level, it has so much power, and which means that the abuse of power that the credit card companies are doing by trying to regulate which games we can buy is just immoral and must be stopped. Too big to fail must not be a thing. It must not be a thing. But that's not the topic. The topic is the money system. And why is that the topic? Because, I forgot. I will get back to that, I guess. How do we decide how much money is in the system? Well, the banks are the places where you, the farmer, for example, gets money. There you can get money to buy a tractor or something. And that tractor then you use to do work. And then comes the moment when it no longer is a zero-sum game. Because you're creating value. The sun, I mean, ultimately it is technically a zero-sum game if you don't believe in the theistic cosmos that I believe in, where we really just have the fountain of entropy of the Big Bang, basically slowly flowing down river, for example, spawning the sun, which keeps then infusing our world with energy constantly that we use to, for example, grow plants, and so on and so forth. But in principle, we could say, yeah, this person is creating value. The farmer is creating value with their work. Utilizing the world, utilizing the energy of the sun, they are creating value. This value is afterwards there, when before it was not. So suddenly you have the apples, you have the cows, you have the wheat, the bread. All of that exists now out of the work and out of the energy involved making it happen. For example, the farmer needed food to eat, and these days we need oil or whatever to fuel our engines that do that. So energy is being put into that. Once again, this tight meshing of our society and systems. But in principle, value is being added to the system. So the farmer has borrowed money from the bank, which now the farmer can pay back, because the farmer has created value. So now he has the money to pay back that, and also now he has created that flow, that system of his personal life that allows him to keep creating that value and to keep adding that value to our system that we collectively inhabit. So money was borrowed from the bank and then was paid back to the bank. Where did the bank get that money from to lend to the people? From the central bank. So the banks borrow money from the central bank, and that is the central, I don't know, the Leitzins. What is again the term? You know that. This one value that they can adjust to regulate the economy. That is every few weeks a big topic on the agenda. That's what they can use to regulate how much money the banks are borrowing from the central bank, which in turn affects how the banks are lending you the money, to how expensive borrowing that money from the bank will be for you. That's how that works. And then the government prints money and adds that to the monetary system according to the value that has been measured to exist by the flow of the economy, by how much money is being borrowed by the banks from the central bank, and so on and so forth. That's how that works. And that's very easy to understand, isn't it? And it's good to add that to that big puzzle of your understanding of reality. I mean, I'm not saying you didn't know that, and I told you, behold, but I'm, putting all the things on one table, all topics at once. Why? Because you are dependent on all of those topics at once, even though you don't feel it. So all of that is important to you, even though you might usually not agree with that sentiment. There's probably a few other topics that I should talk about right now, but currently I cannot see them. So forgive me if I'm not talking for a few minutes to find out whether I should just shut down this video because it has run its course, or whether, whether there will be something more. Of course, I could now go into my theism, but that's not productive, I think. Let's just stick with the worldly stuff this time. Though I can almost not touch it, I would still try to. But I just came up with another thing. What I've also talked about a lot in the past, that we as a society are trying to find the perfect way to coexist. I already said that, right? Because, the reality that we're trying to make our servant, so to speak, or making the ideal space to live in, what is that reality? That is the physical 3D world, of course, but it's also the people around you. So they shall behave in a good way, and so that means that if you don't want to see littering, to use a metaphor here, you should contribute to that by not littering yourself. So try to be a good person, try to be intelligent, try to be wise in your decisions, because you are affecting the system. Everything is political. Everything affects something of our reality, and you don't want to be a negative agent, but you want to have power. And even if you don't want to have power, you will have more and more power, because we as a people, mankind, the civilization, wants to have power over reality, and this will then bleed into your own living space always, by AI, for example, or whatever the means will be. For example, at some point, humanoid robots, which will do a lot of work for us. Oh, right, I was at that topic. See, we are creating value with work. The farmer was an example. Creating value, right? So we are lifting the entirety of our society from a low level to a higher level of being, of fun, of existence, of entertainment, of survivability. That is what we are doing by adding value to our system, which we can then mix and match with the rest. And oh, look at that! I'm finally getting to the right trajectory. Here we go, or rather there, where the local marker is. You can turn that off, by the way, in the settings.
TL01, Station Norvik. We've got eyes on you. Welcome.
And you might ask, why would you want that? It's much easier this way. Yeah, when I did my first flight, though, I had no clue what this thing means, and I eyeballed it. So that's... and it worked. Actually, my first orbital flight worked. From the ground to orbit, I flew like a madman, completely ridiculous, crazy, etc. But in the end, it worked out, and then I docked. It wasn't even a landing. It was a dock where you have to rotate everything correctly and so forth. That was awesome. My first experience in this game. Like that. Really, really fun. Anyway, so this shows you, if you haven't seen it already, without me talking the whole time, that robotics, humanoid robots, will be very important. They will lift up us as a species, as a society, because they will create true value. For example, in farming. You might say that some work then will go away in farming, some jobs, but dude, many jobs are falling away and then new ones are coming back. Do you want to harvest all that wheat manually? No, we have machines for that these days. And that's the same thing still. That's just a different way of that same development. Just row your boat gently down the stream. Go with the flow. It will all work out. We are God, everybody. And we will row this boat down the stream in that direction that we want it to. Now, this will be rough every once in a while because mankind is so unwise. But the best way to not have this litter, this dirt, this unwiseness, unwise decision, wrong decision in the world is to not make them. And that's where you come in. Because to really stop littering, everybody has to stop. There's no use if the guy over there stops if you don't do it. So that's why AI and robotics are such a big fucking deal. If you haven't seen that so far, then I hope you will now rethink the way you communicate about that stuff and read about that stuff and inform yourself about that stuff. Because this will change the world in the most drastic way that the world has ever been changed, except since the arrival of our species on this planet. That is really what we're faced with. That is the scale of things, truly. And this will change basically the fate of mankind. And interestingly, it was baked into the infrastructure of the universe from the beginning of time. If there's such a thing. Of course, time never began. I mean, people who believe that time ever began are idiots. Time cannot begin. See, a time is a property of existence. Time exists. However, that is really in there. Existence has that thing that we call time. Or maybe existence is time on some level. Doesn't matter, but anyway, time exists. And if you're telling me that time once wasn't, because that's what that means, then how would time begin? That is a change of existence. How could existence change in this way if a change requires time? That doesn't make sense. So from the beginning of time, it was already basically baked in there. This, the fact that we would build the atomic bomb, the fact that we would have AI, the fact that robotics would change the fate of mankind forever. For then we will have that which has actually pushed forward many civilizations ridiculously and in the most inhumane and absolutely unacceptable ways possible, slavery. We will have slaves again, but this time there will be nothing wrong with it. So it's good to open oneself up to this world. But okay, I think we have said enough on that matter. So what has to happen when we want to live together is not just that we adapt reality around us, but also that we adapt the people. The people must become better. They must become more truthful, more truth processing. Or not more truth processing, but they're truth processing, I mean like the processing of reality and of information, because reality obviously is the truth. And to be truthful is to communicate with others in ways that align with reality. In a way that they would expect, you know? Well, we have to be better. We have to be better truth processors. We have to be agents of the truth. We have to be agents of reality, because the more power we have over reality, and the goal really is that mankind attains power over reality. And whether you want it or not, you will have at least some of that power. It will just happen. There's no way around that. We ourselves become relevant agents. That's also why the governments are now caring more than they did many years ago about what the individual says. Not just because it's more possible now to regulate that, or because more people are complaining about it when, hey, this person said a thing. But because everybody has more power. Power to the people. And that's the way it should be. I mean, really, we should live, democracy should be true. It shouldn't just be a mockery of democracy, which it generally is. Where we are voting for some king that calls themselves a representative while not being one at all.
DL-01 craft. Station Norvik. You're clear to dock.
I guess Station Norvik is newer, because the voice sounded different. Didn't it? A different voice sample was used there. The same voice, but it was spoken differently. How do you get into this thing? That's what he said. So we have to get better. Why? Well, obviously, because we will have more power over the world. And so if we want the world to be the way we want it to be, this will mean that we need to increase even more the compatibility that we have with each other. I mean, we have a very high compatibility already, if you think about it. I mean, we are not walking around using the club to knock out some guy whose wife we want, who will then have no say over her usage or something, which thankfully has fucking changed. So inviting people who have a different attitude when it comes to that is a questionable endeavor at best. Anyway. But we must be better at implementing as being agents of truth. And you know what this means? This means basically that every person will, in a way, be reality. At least to some small degree. I mean, isn't that so? If you're, I don't know, you're crossing the street, there's a car coming, so you can't cross the street. Or you do it, and then you get hurt. That is reality taking place. That's power. That power, though, is power that someone else has over you. That's power of another person. Arguably, that's not really the power of that person, unless the person is a crazy driver. Because it's just normal. We have decided as a people to regulate it like this, and that person in the car is just adapting to that flow. So in a way, that person is not really wielding that power. The person is just sitting on that stream. And in this case, I mean, street traffic is really a great way to create metaphors for the flow that we collectively live in, because that is just part of that flow that we collectively live in, and that part, funny enough, it looks like flow, it looks like a river, and behaves like that. So it's a good metaphor space, good source for metaphors. Well, and I believe that we will inevitably enter an age of reason, because we're entering the age of reasoning also. I mean, for example, AI forces us to express what we want. Yesterday I made a video, I haven't yet release it. I'm not sure if I want to, because it's a bit questionable, because I'm ripping some people who are critical of AI a new asshole, and that might not be a good idea. I haven't yet decided whether I want to publish that. Where I was showing some new things that AI can do and will do. So AI will have a memory, not just your name is this and I will address you like this, but no, they will actually align to the patterns of your thinking, to the way you communicate and so forth. That is one of the next things that are coming down the pipeline, like next year or the year after that. And this will then be when the big money trap begins, when you will then want to indeed pay for those things so that you have your personal AI, because otherwise every day is starting from scratch, because if you don't pay for that thing, it will always be always start from zero. So that's when things will change on the AI experience front. And there will still be free AI, but still. It's gonna be like kind of like smartphones, the eventual, of course, and very massive arrival of augmented reality glasses, or however that's implemented then. For example, by something that you wear underneath your eyes that uses a laser to project that directly on your retina. Who knows? Whatever. Throat cleared most thoroughly. So, microphone on again. What's the next flight target that I have here? Currently at Norvik Station. Can I go from here somewhere? Pick up hydrogen. Is nearly depleted of hydrogen. We would be grateful for your assistance. Yeah, let's do that. I'm lucky here. Good. I have had worse mission flow. Right above me, you're kidding me. So, Age of Reason, because, see, when this new memory stuff comes in, the AI... if you think that was intense, you have no idea what it sounded like a minute ago. This will mean that the AI will deteriorate somewhat, because it will adapt to you. And if you start fresh, you start with a fresh, sharp AI. I mean, of course, there will still be its foundation that doesn't really go away, but that's what the AI manufacturers, so to speak, they have to implement a level of sanity and resilience where the AI might even then contradict you because you're just going down an insane path. And since it needs to be aligned with you somewhat, that's even the idea with the memory stuffs, and it should still be functional and should not deteriorate together with you, like, for example, become a flat earther or whatever, there will be, basically, you will be bound even more intimately to what the AI will do, or what the information systems that you interact with will do. And this will feed back on your mind. Basically, we can just zoom out and forget AI and information technology completely. We can just say, the more power you wield, the more the power will also wield you. Remember when I said that it's a bidirectional connection? Newton's third law of motion. To every action there's an equal opposite reaction. In this way, you will also be bound more than you are bound today to be sane. So we are building ourselves a world of technology and society and entertainment and machines and AI and such that will require us to be more sane than we are. And this pressure will increase. Ultimately, we will have no choice but to be utterly sane, because we will have the ultimate power of reality with our mind directly, because mind interfaces also already exist and are being employed. There are people who cannot move anything, maybe their tongue, but they can think. And so they think about moving their body. This is picked up by these chips, which this day and age still are implanted, and with many very fine-grained connections that have to be created there. But this exists already, and at some point, who knows, maybe we can implement that without doing surgery. And that will then, of course, be the way that we interact with the machines. You think that's not possible? Why would you think that not possible? When we are living in this very high-tech day and age, Would you have thought 10 years ago they can tell a machine, create a short video about, for me about a thing, about a certain topic, explaining something that I haven't yet understood? Because that's the thing. When you're thinking about AI video creation, you're thinking about AI slop. Have you used them to create a video that explains something to you visually? Maybe you should try that. See, it comes down to how to use the knife. I, for example, have used an AI once to play some dungeon master kind of game where the AI was supposed to be the dungeon master that implements the game to Cyberpunk 2077 and then gives me some... Oh crap. I just got rid of my... of the load that I had with me. Why was I even carrying something? Or was I bumping into something? Oh, that's rather what it is, right? I don't know. I mean, I pushed this button accidentally. I don't know, whatever. So I have to go to that place. Yeah, I'm damaged, so I didn't accidentally drop something. Accidentally. Yeah, well, there's now a dent here. I ran into something, so that's what happened. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. We will at some point be able to control reality directly with our feelings. You might say, well, that's not true. We will use thoughts and stuff like that to use the whatever interface, brain interface. But this means that you're using an interface. And if that interface is very capable, then you would no longer really call it an interface. It would feel like you're one with it. Like I'm currently using this controller. I'm playing this with a game controller. So I can directly translate my intention to manifestation. And in the same way, turning your feelings into a thought and turning those thoughts into maybe some special mental activity that will then be picked up will become so natural to you that you won't think about it. The interface will become the emotion. It's just like when you're thinking 5 times 5, that's 25. You know that. It is so basic math that it's just a singularity in your thinking. It's not even a thought process that takes place. You might say you're recording that from memory, but in this particular example, yes, but what if you have to do some math that is so simple? Then you will do math, but it will be so singularity based that that's how these stage math magicians do it. Of course, there's some tricks up their sleeves, but they can indeed do math on a level where you would think, how the fuck do you do that this fast? Because they have trained to do it so much that the circuitry, so to speak, that they're using in their head is so they just have to touch it. Just like you have to just have to touch 5 times 6. Well, what's that then? 30. And in the same way, we will be interacting with the machines. And with that, we will interact with the world. And so what does that mean? This means that we will become what we were before the universe, when we were controlling the world, which was us, something that was all that existed, directly with our minds. Only we will have become that once again in the universe. You don't have to view it like that, but you can view it as, and have to, is that we will have the ability to control reality directly with our mind. To some degree at least. That is what will happen, no questions. And this means that you will be sane. You will have to be sane, because otherwise you will be wrapped in an insane reality, or an interface that will tell you that you're acting wrong, which will of course then also train you. So we are bound to become the perfect coexistence. Isn't that interesting that the universe was bound to create intelligent life? That it was bound basically from the beginning to create AI. That it was bound from the beginning to, I don't know, all the things that we have these days, not all the details of it, just like the universe could have evolved differently. That galaxy over there, that didn't have to be there, but it happens to be there. that is how the free will component that we have, and that comes into the system, fellow gods, of course, somehow, factored into this. But ultimately, it was basically written from the start that we would eventually form the perfect society, and that is what is on the horizon. And let me tell you, this is not just a matter of you purifying yourself, or being purified by society, or some technology coming in. This is also a matter of killing the unworthy. And I'm not saying that anyone should kill anyone. No. I'm saying that, it works like this. The more we're turning into that perfect path that we, as billions of people, have for 100,000 people, for 100,000 years. I mean, of course, we didn't have a billion even until like 80 years ago. So, but okay, that's beside the point. Have been trying to get to achieve. Once we are getting into that final strait, into that final, the final stretch of it, do you not think that things will accelerate? Now look at the world. Are things not accelerating? So what you are risking, if you're not purifying yourself, is that the high energy of this steering into the flow, steering into the one path that mankind for 100,000 years wanted to achieve, will then really try to get into. Because every wrong steering at that speed that we will achieve there will also be very, very disastrous. See, we will keep accelerating the more we steer into the right path, but this also means that every wrong decision will be so painful. Like abusing technology these days to surveil the people too much, basically. Like prohibiting their speech and so forth. We can do that, but it's wrong. That's the wrong move. We have accelerated that people can now communicate individually on the web and can have a much louder voice, can have much more impact. Now we're trying to deal with that. Now we're trying to do that by prohibiting free speech, basically. But that's the wrong way to go about it. But we have to find that out. But see, that's the thing. We have accelerated on this path, and now we have the speed, and now we have to deal with that, and now we're trying to steer. And to control free speech is not the way to do it. But mankind has no choice, really, but to try it, to try the various things, and let reality then do the thinking. I mean, in my opinion, we can basically, like I already demonstrated here, come to the conclusion that free speech is really needs to reign supreme. Hey, where do I have to go? Oh, there. I'm flying in the wrong direction. I'm looking in the wrong direction. So the closer we get to that, the more it will accelerate. And when it accelerates, you know what that means. It means that there will be more energy at play. And this means that if there's some wrong motion there somewhere, this will lead to more suffering, to more damage, to more collateral damage. And the more the power really rests with the individual, and more it does. And that's good. Because the I am, it wants to re-emerge, and it will. And so we will be many I ams, living together in love for eternity. And of course you will be immortal. But let's ignore that for a moment and stay with the worldly stuff that I have pretty much proven logically to be true. Once this high energy comes into play, and more power rests with the individual, more and more, this energy play will affect you. You will be the one judged. You will be judged. This is the final judgment. You will be judged by reality. Or maybe by yourself, but I mean, it comes down to reality. Reality will judge you. Are you a worthy coexistence participant? Yes, then you shall remain. Are you not? No? Then you shall die. That is what will happen. I'm not saying there will be some government or some individual decisions, and I'm telling you, definitely do not do anything yourself. I'm trying to tell you what will happen to the world and thus to yourself, and that you have to adapt to it. You have to. If you want to exist. If you want to exist, and if you want to be happy, if you don't want to suffer this existence, ultimately it will not even be a matter of that. You will either exist and be sane and happy, or you will not exist. If you want that, you have to be sane. There are no doubts here, there's no question. That's the way it has to be. That's pretty mind-blowing if you think about it, right? I mean, there's a lot of stretches here that I'm making with my logic, but I know them to be true. And if you can't follow them and say, I mean, you can follow them probably, you see where I'm coming from, what leaps I'm taking, but you might not follow them as in, okay, I accept what you're saying. You might say, well, that's very speculative and I don't quite buy it. I buy it 100%. Well, I have no choice but to say I know it to be true. So I know that all religious people will eventually be dead, or they will no longer be religious, which is basically the same thing. I'm not saying theists, I'm saying people who have been infected by a mind virus that controls their decisions on a level that is relevant enough. Because we have to be utterly sane in that reality that we're entering, where we will be wrapped once again into a reality that we project ourselves effectively, that is a slave to our will. If we don't want to go to hell, if we don't want to burn in the fire of our own wrongful mind, then our minds will have to be sane. Is it not so that these days already your mind has to be more sane than it had to be 100 years ago? Now, it's not easy to measure, because there are people, for example, who believe in the flat earth, which is, of course, completely ridiculous and basically completely flies in the way of this tightly woven environment that we find ourselves in, because it only works because we have understood our world, our environment correctly. And it's not flat, it kind of looks like this here. But if you really look at it, you have to be more... Okay, we're kind of coddled a bit, but I mean, what about... could you cross the street 1,000 years ago without looking left and right? Yes, you could. Can you do that these days? Only a few times. And then you're dead. So, yeah. I think I have said enough on that matter, and maybe I have even said enough overall, so I don't really have to land here now, but I wanna. So let me the rest of the video may be me just landing down there, and then I cut it off, but maybe I can think of another thing. Let's see. Well, I'm zapping around and I cannot see it right now. So since I was mentioning my theism every once in a while, and since this view of the coming world that I'm describing, if you accept it to be probably true, is intriguing when it comes to this theistic view, maybe it makes sense that I touch upon it right now. So, before the universe... Does it even make sense before the universe? Yes, of course. Because if you, let's say, if we are trying to understand the universe, then we have to look at the very small. Because at the very small, we see the very abstract. We see, for example, the atoms that build everything, out of which everything consists. They themselves are relatively formless, but look at all the form that we have. That is the concrete, built by this abstract thing that is the atom, which itself is built by that even more abstract thing that is the fundamental particles, which are point-like localized forces. They are not even bodies anymore. And that's interesting, because it means that matter itself is becoming conceptual when you get into those scales. And location, space-time itself, is also becoming conceptual. It's interesting. Conceptual as in mental? The closer we get to the root of all things? That's not suspicious to you at all. Interesting. Anyway, so... see, when there are two quantum particles, quantum scale particles, like two fundamental particles entangled with each other, having the same quantum state that they share, and you separate them, and then you inflict some force upon one of them, which is usually called when you measure them, but it's not about perception or whatever. It's just a measurement implicitly afflicts them with some force. Ultimately, it is about the interaction. So if you apply some force to them, then you will force them to collapse into a defined state. And its partner will then also collapse into a defined state. That will, I believe, be the very opposite, the minus, not the plus or the whatever, something like that. And that happens instantaneously. So if you brought them away by 100,000 kilometers, and you do that, you will still see an instantaneous change. This cannot be used for communication, That has of course been investigated thoroughly, but that's what happens. We know that there's a faster than light event here. It's at infinite speed. It's instant. This is proven science for a long time now. What happens there? What happens there is that these things just ignore that we have something like space-time. To them, in that situation, space-time is, I don't know, it doesn't even exist. And that's interesting, right? We're looking at this world right here, consisting of rocks and minerals and whatever, ultimately of chemistry of molecules, which consist of atoms, which consists of fundamental particles, which consists of the flow of reality making them at some point. I mean, we still have that same furnace here, that same mechanism that creates fundamental particles out of virtual particles, at the black holes and such, Hawking radiation and so forth. So that still exists. The forge of the fundamental particles still exists. So what was the very beginning of the universe like? Was it already space-like? The universe, as far as we know, is infinite in space, in size. So whatever the people say that at the beginning the universe was a point, it was a singularity, but that's a bad way to express it, because people think, well, this whole thing was shrunk together spatially to a point, which it never was. That doesn't make sense. You cannot expand from a finite size, which a point pretty surely is, to an infinite size in a non-discrete process at a finite time. That doesn't work. So, at the beginning of the universe, we had a situation that was not space-like. There was no space. And, well, spoiler, since you created it, and whenever you are in between dreams, for example, before the universe, you are completely undefined, that's the first thing that ever happened, technically. And it was really a completely undefined state, so no wonder what we find the closer we get to the universe's beginning, the more undefined it gets. Anyway, so at the beginning, the space wasn't space-like. It was kind of fading in. The fact that there's something like space, the concept of space, was kind of fading in from something that we can't fathom yet. At the beginning, there was no space. Maybe it was already universe-like, probably, that there was some tendency in whatever existence really is that was causing it to ultimately unfold into what it is now, the universe. But you know what that means? It means that this non-space-like situation was bound to become space-like. This means that this system that inevitably then built all the things that we have now, for example, built the system that still creates fundamental particles, that system is still there and is still making world, is still making reality, is bound to everything, and is still very systematic, logical, because else we wouldn't have the world yet. It's still following its same laws. And this place, this spacelessness, it's everywhere. And that's indeed the mechanism, that's my view at least, because science hasn't yet picked up on this obvious conclusion for whatever reason. I know that science doesn't work in conclusions, it works in things that can be proven. I'm not stupid. But I mean, if you want to measure something, you first have to have an idea of where to look. And for that you need hypotheses. And that hypothesis I haven't yet seen, where someone would say reality is probably spaceless on some level that we still have these days, which then explains how there can be spaceless events like this spooky action at a distance of quantum mechanics. And that then could indeed explain... crap. No, I will probably die because of this one button push. God damn it! This one button changes its functionality. That's what's happening. That's why I was so confused there. Depending on how high you are.
Base 107 ground. Greetings, we see you on screen.
So, the spacelessness is still everywhere, but you know what that means? It means that every place of the universe is connected to every other place of the universe, because it's connected to that system which does not have space. And it also means that it's connected in a logical way that has systems, patterns, rules, laws. And this means that the entire universe is one orchestra of events. That is what that means. And that explains why we haven't yet found any alien life. Because there is none. The cause and effect weight of the cosmic evolution fell to Earth once biological life emerged. Or maybe even before that. we are the center of the universe when it comes to cause and effect. We will not be deleted by an asteroid because we don't want that to happen. See, there's some part of our will that projects the cosmos and that we have no control over. That's the reason why from the perfect undefinedness, where we then decided to dream the one perfect possible dream. And we didn't know what that was, so we aimed to just go into a dream, but not define it, as we would usually have done before the universe. Right, before the universe, does that make sense? See, of course, when the beginning of time, or not the beginning of time, the beginning of the universe is the perfect undefined state of I am, then this means in this moment it wasn't yet the universe, it just chose to become that. You chose to become the universe, which you now are from the human perspective. You are the host to all the other humans. I am the host to all of you. Everybody is the cosmos from their perspective, which can easily be understood if you think about the following. What is your identity? In other words, who are you? You are consciousness in a space-time situation. And that space-time situation is the situation around you. For example, the go-to example I always use is we had a piano in our household. That's why I ended up dealing with music a lot. So that's part of my identity a lot. So I can say I am and also a musician. Not a good one. And there's also your inner identity, the form that your brain has taken, the data that was stored in there, your current emotional tendencies, whatever chemical situation is in there, whether you have some psychosis, and so forth and so on. All of that is your inner physical space that your mind, that your consciousness is dealing with. And so you are really, I mean, if you say that what is the question, who are you, means that is your identity, and your identity is basically the world around you and the shape within you. So in other words, your identity is the world, then you can quite literally say you are the world from your perspective. And that completely makes sense when you consider that you made it. And how would you make it? By casting something into existence? No, by doing the only thing that you can do, by imagining yourself to be this. On God level, obviously. Not just some human imagination. So when we then started that dream, we didn't define anything. We tried to dream up ourselves. We tried to dream up the I am, the completely undefined free living fantasy. We tried to dream that up. We tried to join the dream state and the wake state. We tried to create a state where we would not fall eventually into the perfect orgasm realization of I exist after every dream, but instead to have an eternal ascension to that infinite moment of light that we can never ever reach again. But we can get close infinitesimally closely to it. We can close the distance to an infinitely small but never actually zero distance. So we can infinitely increase the happiness, the bliss that we will experience here in this dream of truth, because this dream is the truth now. Because it has this form, because we were implementing God's very nature into it. Why? Because when we started this dream, we didn't define I want to do this, I want to do that. We just decided we want to dream. But we want to explicitly not define. And what does that mean? That means that God infuses energy into his circle, which then becomes from a circle to a dancing circular oscilloscope. So he's changing his shape. He's investing energy, creating energy out of willing it into being. The will self. The will itself. That is what you are. You are the I am, and so am I. And our fate is eternal and blissful. And loving. Maybe you should want to think about that a bit. So we just infused energy into the system that we were, and the system was completely undefined. But since we, by that very act, no longer were undefined, because now it was now the undefined plus some additional energy, we had no choice but to take form. But the goal was to not define anything. We wanted to see how that dream would evolve. What would be the true dream of ourselves? Of the I am. What would that be like? And so then the universe collapsed into having something like heat. Isn't the concept of heat interesting when you're understanding it's just motion? Because that's what it is. If you have a brick of metal, of steel, whatever, and it's completely cold, 0 Kelvin, then nothing within it is moving. But if you now inflict an impulse upon it, so one of the molecules in that grid, which is in a force grid, basically, that makes it a brick, that makes it matter. It's not a crystal, but just imagine there's a rectangular grid. Now it's now beginning to swing in its force cage, where its ideal zero place would be. Then this will change the force situation, which will then affect their neighbors. So they will all start to swing and move around. That's heat. It is chaos, chaotic motion. It's not momentum, everything moving in one direction. It is chaos. And we as a people, we have to become... We are aligning, we are turning that heat, that thermal energy of our chaos, we are turning that into momentum. And the more we're doing it, the more you will all be affected by it. So try to be sane. Because once the system will say you have to move in this direction, which will not be like we will all be walking in the same rhythm or whatever. It will be the human rhythm, the human flow. That was the goal for 100,000 years. You will be free, you will be yourself, but you will have to move that way. You will have to be that which you are as a being already. You will have to be the love that the universe is for us. You will have to be that because that's what you are. You will have to unlock that being. Because else you will die, instead of becoming eternal. So that's, heat is just the movement of, it's just basically motion, chaotic motion. But if we go backwards in the universe, in time, and see that the more heat we have, the less we can have particles, they would just be ripped apart. That's why we didn't have atoms at first. If you keep going backwards, we even don't have fundamental particles, because there was too much heat. But do you not understand that this means that heat itself is basically the fading in, or that it's one of the indicators of the fading in of physical space? Because the further back we go, at some point there was just heat, which would not allow anything to form. So we could say in a way that heat is the will of the Creator, because the Creator said there shall be form, but there shall not be form. There shall be energy, but I shall not form it. The strongest will was, let it not have form. Let it be completely undefined. Basically, entropy, chaos, heat is a representation of the undefined in the universe. And then, serious, an interesting question. What does heat look like? This chaotic flow of what? There was nothing that could have heat even. That is the transition from pure energy, from the I am, to the cosmos flavored energy. At that point, you have nailed it down. Now you can imagine the beginning of the universe right there. I wish science would do that. Maybe they would have some new ideas as to what to investigate. Anyway, and so the idea was to not be defined. So the first thing that emerged were fundamental particles. And from then, still the most undefined thing, atoms. And from that, still the most undefined thing, molecules. See, it was trying to stay not defined. And so the closer we go to the beginning of the universe, what we find is less and less defined stuff. Until we find the perfectly undefined. The I am. We are living in a theistic cosmos, fellow God. And that's all I will say on the matter.